Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to week 2 of 2022 and it is time to go over the books that I read last week. So we have a little weekly wrap up today. I think we have 12 books to go over. Well, really 11 because one of them is a DNF, but I mean we'll still talk about it a little bit. But first off, two things. The very first one is we have a new channel member to welcome. We have Your Nerd is Showing. I don't have a first name for that person, so if you want to tell me, that's fine. If not, you can just remain that. Reach out to me on the Discord if you would like extra perks that come with that. Otherwise, we're so happy to have you. I have glitter on my eyes, and I can see it on my eyelashes, so don't mind that. Got some new eyeshadow and I went a little crazy with it. But okay, sorry. As usual, I think that my hair is okay and then I sit down to film and it pisses me off. So I just had to fix that. But anyway, I have a new book tracking form that I'm using this year. And with it, I am also tracking my Steam ratings for the books that I read, okay? So that means I want to be able to share that with you. So I will have my Chromebook is over here, so I may look over to that to start. I also used this to write down the names of the characters, which will be very helpful for me. But there just may be a little bit of looking over this way. So anyway, I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be very helpful for me specifically as you know, trying to share that information with you guys. So I'm excited about it. But I will have to get used to, you know, how I am using it. Because I'm not used to having notes or anything. So here we go. I think we're good to go. So, okay. So starting out the week, I had my DNF, so we'll just get that out of the way. One of the books that I had on my TBR for this month was One Night Promise by Jodi Malpas. People always recommend Jodi Malpas to me. I understand she is a nostalgic author for a lot of people. She was around during those like 2010 craze where everyone was doing like the BDSM shit and all that fun stuff. And I'm not saying BDSM is shit because I love it, but I think we can all agree that there was a lot of books that came out during that time that they worked for us at the time, but when we try to go back to visit them, it doesn't work as well. I have read the This Man series by her, and it was only okay. I've tried other books and have been able to get into them. This was another one. I tried the audiobook for this. I tried reading this one last weekend, and I made it about 70 pages in, and I was bored out of my mind. And the fact that this is 400 pages and there's also 2 other books in the series, I was just like, this is the quickest way to lead to a slump by Jenn that has ever happened. So this was a DNF, meaning I have no rating and I have no Steam rating to share for you. And whoever recommended this isn't against you. It was a perfectly legit recommendation. It's not going to vibe for me. So it didn't work. So then I was also still partially in a book slump. Like I knew this was happening because I had just finished Manacled, and so things were difficult for me. So I recently put out a video that was books I wanted to reread, and so I decided to turn back to that list since I was like, well, let me read something that I already know how it goes so that we can do that. So I picked up Wrong by Jana Aston. This is from the series that's called Wrong, and this one is a college like sophomore or junior, and she's a virgin, and she goes to have a gynecologist appointment to get put on birth control because she's thinking about having sex with her boyfriend. And the gynecologist that she sees is the man that she's been flirting with at the coffee shop where she works for the last couple months. And it turns out that he volunteers at this hospital a couple times a month, and she has an orgasm when he is giving her an exam. And it is just as awkward as you think it is. And that's why this book is called Wrong. The characters in this, it's Luke and Sophie. I gave this book 4 stars on my reread. 4 stars is what I gave it the first time. This isn't anything life-changing. It's actually the second book in this series. That's my favorite one. And yeah, and I'd give this Steam like a 3.5 chili pepper is what I'm feeling with this. I'll try to remember to put my new spice rating scale down below so that you can have some reference for like how I'm rating them. But I'm not going to put that in every video. That you'll start to get a feel for what I mean by it. But I gave this one 3.5 stars. It is very sexy. He's very like dominant. He's a little bit rough. There's some spanking in this one, but overall it's a pretty quickie and it's a great time. And it definitely was helping me move through the funk that I was in. But then lucky for me, the next day, last Sunday, I was given Munro by Kresley Cole. So I was so blessed to sign up to be on Kresley Cole's ARC team, and I was even luckier to be accepted. Monroe comes out in 10 days. It comes out on January 25th. It is coming soon, and I got to read an ARC of this book. And obviously I can't say too much about it, but there's a couple things that I will say. One, I commented on this on my Instagram, but I listened to all of the Immortals After Dark. They were books that I listened to near the beginning of my audio book listening journey, and I heard that Robert Peckoff did an amazing job, and so I took that to the bank, and I have all of these books on my Audible account, and I blew through all of them. And so when I was reading the arc of this book, I was literally doing all of the voices in my head that Robert Peckoff does for everybody. And it made the experience of reading this so great. But also I can't wait for it to come out, because even though Kresley Cole will be indie publishing these under the Valkyrie Press from now on, one of the reasons why it's been 5 years since a book came out, which I know people on Goodreads apparently can't think beyond themselves for 5 minutes to think that an author is a human, not just a content creating machine for you. And there were some problems with her publisher, and there were some issues in her personal life, and there were lawsuits involved, and all this jazz that I haven't looked into and I don't really care to. The point is, the woman is back. She has this book coming out. She has one in her Arcane Chronicles coming out, and we are back on track, okay? We are back. And this book was 6 stars. This is about Monroe, who is the twin brother of McGreeve. It is highly recommended that you have at least read McGreeve, and as well as the Dacian books if you want to. I've only read one of the Dacian books, and I didn't feel lost. A lot of it is that the reason that I came to Immortals After Dark was through the Fated Mates podcast. So I know a lot more about the whole world than I would have known if I had just read these just by myself. So that's something to keep in mind. But you for sure would want to have read McGreeve before you meet Monroe, because they are twin brothers. Monroe is in McGreeve quite a bit. These are both Lycae. They are Prince of the Lycae, and they are nicknamed Hot and Hotter. And at the end of McGreeve, you'll know that Monroe is in a very difficult place right now. He's in a very difficult position because of some things that happen. And Kieran, or Ren as her nickname, yes, I had my first book of 2022 with Ren as main character. And yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, because if you love IAD, you're going to read this, and if you're not interested in IAD, then you don't care. So I gave this 6 stars. This is definitely on my, it is on my favorite of the year. It just had to be. I thought it was going to be at a 5-star, which would have, been perfectly reasonable. And then the ending just boosted it over the top for me. I would give this one 3 chili peppers. There is a lot of sexual tension in this, but as with quite a few of Kresley Cole, there's a lot of sexual tension and sexual innuendo, but actual sex, you don't always get a ton of that. But the stuff we did get, it was good. It was good. So 6-star book for sure. Then I read Lord of Temptation by Lorraine Heath. I listened to this on Libby. This is book 2 in the Lords of Pembroke trilogy, which is about 3 brothers who had their title and their family fortune stolen from them by their uncle. He tried to have them murdered. They were able to escape, but it took them quite a few years to be able to amass enough power and wealth on their own right to be able to come back and make a claim for their family. The first book was about the heir, the oldest, and about him getting his birthright back, and this is about his younger brother Tristan. I believe this one's Tristan, or is this the twin brother? I'm actually not sure which one this one is. But anyway, this one is about Tristan Easton, and the heroine's name is Anne, and she is, at the beginning of this book, she's looking to find passage on a ship to get her to be able to see her fiance, who's been away at war, and she wants to go and see him. And our hero makes it so that the only way she can get where she's going is if she chooses his ship, and as payment, he would like a kiss from her. And she's very offended by this, but he makes it so that she cannot go see her fiance any other way but through him. And he plans to use this one kiss to be able to convince her to have an affair with him. And that's his plan. I mean, Lorraine Heath writes a great story, and she always has really great writing and complex characters and tortured heroes. However, this is the second book in a row in this series that I think the hero is a bit of a tool, and he is not as possessive or obsessive over his woman as I like Lorraine Heath's heroes to be. He's very much like, there's never going to be a chance for us. I just want to be able to sleep with her. I'm even willing to ruin her so that only I have access to her as my mistress. And that kind of thinking kind of makes me want to throat punch the hero, which is very frustrating. But again, her writing is so compelling that I made my way through this book. It's just when I was done, I was like, that is not a favorite. That's a bummer. So this one was 4-star, and I gave this one 2.5 chili peppers. Then I forgot to have this one in my stack. I read Hugo and the Maiden. This is book 3 in the Seducers. I will actually be returning this one to get a different one because I ordered these books to get these covers. Like, this is the old cover. Amazon said that all of them were going to be these covers. Look at these gorgeous covers from the first two. But I ended up getting the old cover for this one. So on Tuesday, when I get back to the office, I'm actually going to return this one and like try ordering it again. But that's okay, because the book inside I enjoyed quite a bit. So yeah, this is book 3 in the Seducers. This one is about Hugo, and he works at a brothel. He's a prostitute. He's one of the 3, prostitutes in this series that they have either left the business or have become like higher on the totem pole. He's obviously the last one of the original 3 who is still working at the brothel, and he has a partner whose name is, what's her name? She's a horrible person, Laura. And she's she's also a whore, and she betrays him because she's gotten into some gambling debt. And so she has him kidnapped and put on a prisoner ship bound for New South Wales so that she can sell his half of the business to pay off her gambling debt. So Hugo, who is a cocky man who is obsessed with money and possessions because he came from nothing, he is the son of a whore, he has lived the life of a whore, and for him, his best life is going to be having as much money as he can and fucking whoever he wants to fuck and getting paid for it and loving it. And then he ends up on this prisoner ship, which, trigger warning for like, what did I say for this? Like violence and maiming, because in the beginning when he is on this ship, there is a like mutiny that happens by the prisoners, and one of the prisoners like goes crazy and starts murdering the people he is connected to and using their bodies to form a mountain so he can get out of the hold of this ship. So Hugo is able to rally some of the other prisoners who are afraid of this guy, and they're actually able to escape. And there's a mutiny happening on the ship between the sailors, as well as there's the prisoners in the hold trying to escape. And basically this leads to a shipwreck, and a bunch of the members of this end up on this small island in the middle of nowhere, where we have, the teeny island is called Stroma, and there is Miss Martha Pringle, who is the daughter of the vicar there. So that's where the Maiden comes in. And Martha and her villagers, they are taking care of these men who they don't know which ones are prisoners really and which ones are sailors, and this is a whole big thing. The way that Hugo is able to not have to be recaptured is that he isn't officially on the ship's log because he was kidnapped and put on there. You know, he was like smuggled onto this ship by Laura and like her connection. So he wasn't officially a prisoner on this ship, even though he is a bad man, and a lot of the things that he'd done would have gotten him on this ship anyway. So it's a lot of things, but there's a real like hate to love between these two. It has this like trope that I really like, which is this very sexual man who's very in control of his desires, like gets a boner for a lady that he doesn't want to. I just get such a kick out of that trope so much. And that's definitely for Hugo, who he literally is in command of his dick. That is his trade. That is his moneymaker. He tells it when to work and when not to. And he just can't help himself around Martha. And the way that this book unfolds and the way that things happen both on the island of Storma and when we get back to London are very interesting. And like with so many of SM LaViolette's books, the road to the happily ever after is very painful, and at times you will hate either or both of the characters, but she just writes historicals in a way that I've never read before, and I really appreciate. And I'm very excited that in the back of this book she announces that there will be more books coming in her Victorian Decadence series, as well as she has a new series coming that will have a female boxer in it. Like there's gonna be this series that has this circus that's all females, and one of the books is gonna be called The Boxing Baroness. So I'm very excited. So this book itself, I did give this one 4 stars just because even though it was fascinating and like I really enjoy that stuff, Hugo, he's not the swooniest best guy I've ever read before, but it's still, this trilogy was really great. I really enjoyed reading it, and I can't wait to read more of both Minerva Spencer and SM LaViolette's work. So I gave this one 4 stars and 3 chili peppers because it does get a little spicy for historicals. Real fun. Okay, then I read this dumpster fire, Dark Elves Taken by Jet Mykles, and I read, there's 2 novellas in here. This was sent to me by a viewer / person on Instagram who, they had actually read the book. They didn't totally love it either, but they had bought a copy of it, and I guess it's a pretty like rare copy or whatever, so that's kind of cool. And it is interesting. This book is literally about black-skinned sex elves, which we'll talk about in a second. But anyway, this person reached out to me and they were like, hey, I want to get rid of this book, but I don't know where to get rid of it because I don't just want to give it to the library sale or a thrift store because it's pretty erotic. And I was like, sure, you can send it to me. And then I forgot about it, that this person did that. And so when I went to my P.O. box and found this, I was a little bamboozled because they hadn't put a note inside. And so I shared a picture of it on Instagram. And then they reached out and reminded me. And I was like, holy shit, what was this? And she was like, I know, it's pretty crazy. But this book is about these black-skinned, white-haired, sex-oozing devils. And they think that they can make Diana into a broodmare and a sex slave. So there's these black race of elves, like they're black-skinned, white-haired, mystical creatures, but there are no females that are ever born to them. They are cursed. They were meant to be like tools of the gods. The gods created them to be their pleasure devices, basically. And so there are no women created for them. So what they do is they kidnap human women. They do this spell on them, which part of it has to do with fucking their brains out until they are jello. And then they will slowly start turning into one of them and they can bear young for them. So then what happens is that there is one fated mate for every elf. And so they will get the woman for 9 days at a time and see who can get her pregnant. I think you're starting to see some of the triggers for this. And whoever is able to get her pregnant, that's who her mate is, because you can only impregnate your mate. So basically all of these women are unwilling, but because of the spell that's done to them, they crave the dick. They crave the dick from these elves. And so they just really like kind of laugh as the women say no and as they fight them, because they're like, well, we're giving you pleasure, so you're just going to do what we want. And it is disturbing as fuck. Okay, it is so disturbing. Like, the trigger warnings for this are rape. Literally, they call it rape. Like, the woman is like, you are raping me. And he's like, yeah, but you like it. And it doesn't matter now because you can't leave. You either find your mate with them and find a mate, or if you don't end up mating with anyone, if no one gets you pregnant, you get put in a brothel to be used until you're done. Yep, they're really great. Really great. And it's done in this like humorous way. And again, I'm not shaming anyone, because I like some kink going on. I like some, you know, forced situations, but like this one was just like a lot, because it was very difficult. Like, when the woman would get to the point where she would basically just give up and decide to be okay with it. It's all of the things of like forced sexual encounters without there being like the discussion and like the mind changing of it, which for me, when I'm reading a book that has dubious consent or non-consensual, I need the woman to kind of like be more into it eventually. I know that's wrong, but whatever. Like, I like the kinky things, but this was just, I couldn't see that like into it where I was like, oh, this is why I'm attracted to it. So this was 2 stars. It was a 4 on the spice rating, but it has trigger warnings for rape and forced pregnancy and just basically being aroused against your will and all those things. So I don't know what I was doing with this, but I read it, and I will try to find a place to dispose of it safely, as the person who sent it to me asked me to. But yikes. Okay, then I read Changing the Rules by Catherine Bybee. This book was also on my TBR. This was one that I got from a book box, so I have a signed copy. This is book 1 in the Richter series. This is a like investigative, kind of a mystery solving situation. Not what I was expecting based on the cover. I was able to listen to this audiobook. I actually got it on Audible, so I used a credit. But this is about the McBain Security and Solutions, and Claire Kelly has a bunch of covert skills, and they do like bodyguard things and security for different events, usually celebrities. And then there's Cooper Lockman, who they used to work together before his feelings for her sent him to Europe for 6 long years, because she was only 18 when she started working for the company, and I think he was like 8 to 10 years older than her, and he was feeling creepy that he was interested in her. So he asked for an assignment overseas. So I was like, you know, when we're dealing with a very realistic contemporary romance, that seems like a legit thing to do. It was fine. The thing was, this wasn't really like a mutual pining situation. Like, he alone had feelings for her, so he removed himself from the situation. No problems with that at all. But now he's back, and their current mission is to go undercover at a California school to root out the mastermind behind a prostitution ring that's targeting young girls at a couple of different schools. So because she still looks young enough, she's able to go undercover as a senior, and they're trying to find out which teachers or coaches or whoever is involved in helping kidnap these girls, which is a heavy topic. And the book, I feel, doesn't take it lightly. It's just that I was bored, because this one, it really was about the investigativeness of it, and the romance was so backseat. It was so backseat. There was also barely a puff of steam in this. There is 2 sex scenes, both of which are fade to black, and I just was not that interested in this story. So there was nothing wrong with this one. If you want to read one that is less sexy, I don't know how you're still watching my videos after all this time, but some of you like it a little more chill, and maybe you will enjoy this, because again, there was nothing wrong with it. There's a great cast of characters. I know there's 2 other books in this series as well. And the author's note at the end really did touch me, because this author was writing this book to bring attention to the fact that like this does happen in schools, and to kind of say thank you to teachers and coaches who are looking out for their students and trying to protect them for this. So the book as itself, I think, is a I'm glad that it exists, and I hope there are some people who really love this, but I am not the intended audience for this. I was pretty bored. So I gave this one 3 stars, and again, I didn't even give this 1 chili pepper because, as you'll see when I like have my scale listed down below, I have like no steam and then a puff of steam before the chili peppers, and this was just a puff of steam. Like, there's some kissing, there was foreplay, and once the dick went in, we kind of left the room for the most part. So that would be like a puff of steam for me, which is not on brand. It's just not on brand, but that wasn't a bad book at all. I'm glad that I tried it. Okay, then I finished Make Me Hunger by Tiffany Roberts, and this is book 2 in the Isle of the Forgotten series. This is about another demon. This is about the demon Baltharis, who was kind of the villain in the first book, kind of. He's been on this prison island where the demons' like powers are taken away and they're left there as like punishment. And then our heroine is Amnestria, who I believe is an enforcer, or she's called like a justice or something like that. I will be honest, a little confused by some of the terminology in this one. And she ends up on this island, and he realizes that she's his fated mate, and he goes about trying to convince her that they're supposed to like be together. So I was excited to read about Baltharis. I will tell you, a big part of the problem with this one is just that like I kept getting distracted from this book. Like, I had started this book like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and so by the time I was finishing it, I wasn't as engaged anymore. So part of that is my fault. And I do want to read the other 2 books in this series. I know there's another one and then a novella for this series. So I gave this one 4 stars, but only 2 on the spice rating because this one actually didn't have a ton of sexy times in it. So that's where, or no, 2.5 I gave it. So yeah. Then I was still like kind of struggling to like catch in books. You know, I had a couple of like duds kind of in a row. So I decided that my hold on Libby was coming up for Once Upon a Maiden Lane, which is the last novella and the very last book in the Maiden Lane series. And so I wanted to give this one a go. So this one is about Mary Whitson, who is a young girl who had went to Winter's school for like the orphan children in St. Giles, and she was eventually asked to move in with one of the ladies to like be a nursemaid to her children. And so she's been living with them. And one day she goes to a bookshop on her day off, and this man is like hitting on her. And in her head, she's thinking like, oh, I hate it when I get hit on. Like, I just want to have my day off. Why do people have to be hitting on me? It was really cute. And this man mistakes her for his fiance. And he's surprised to see his fiance at the bookstore because he didn't know she liked to read. Like, didn't know that. Well, it turns out she's not his fiance, but she looks like his fiance's lost twin sister, who he was originally supposed to be engaged to. So there you go. That is the complicated setup of this. So Mary Whitson, who her name is supposed to be, I can't even remember what the name was because they want to start calling her that name instead. And she's like, I mean, my name is still Mary no matter what you call me. And Henry is the name of our hero in this. And they immediately are very attracted to each other. And this becomes a little bit of a Pygmalion situation because her supposed family is going to try to help her fit into society and prepare her for her now arranged marriage with Henry. Now, she is kind of like being pushed into this, but they also, again, have a lot of chemistry. So she agrees that she will marry him if that's what her new family needs her to do. Because also, her now twin sister that she's been introduced to, she would have to marry Henry, which again, she was engaged to him, but she's in love with somebody else. And so Mary, who didn't really have any prospects before, you know, she was very happy where she was living and the job that she was doing, but she's willing to marry Henry so that her new sister can have who she wants. So that's enough to say about this. Two things that I will say. If you're going to read this one, this is a book you read when you've read all the rest, because it really does wrap up the Maiden Lane series. We get to see all of our favorite people. We get to see Winter. We get to see Winter again. That's all that I'll say. And it was so beautiful. This was only like 130 pages. I listened to the audiobook in just a couple of hours, and it was so precious. So I gave this 4.5 stars, and it was only 2 on the spice rating because there isn't a lot of time in the novella. But this was great. There is a trigger warning for attempted murder, but that's about it. It was very sweet, and I highly recommend. Now, I'm going to kind of talk about this next trilogy all at once because I don't want to go into heavy detail. I mean, even as someone who likes to go into heavy detail, I just don't really want to. But this trilogy was recommended in my viewer recommendations, and I don't know. I was really intrigued by the premise of this book, which I'll tell you in a second. So I decided to give it a go because I was like, all right, let's give it a go. And I've read some Ashley Jade before. I have. And I've liked some of it, and I haven't liked some of it. So I was just like, whatever. The premise of this book is that there's this woman named Kit. There's this man named Preston. This series also connects with Complicated Parts, which is an MFM or an MMF series by Ashley Jade. Preston is the brother of one of those characters. Anyway, there's Kit and Preston, and then there's this woman named Becca. Becca is engaged to Kit, but she also is Preston's girlfriend. Kit and Preston don't know about each other. And then Becca turns up pregnant. And Kit, who has had to not live in the closet, she's out, but her grandmother, who is the guardian of her family fortune, when her parents died when she was very young, her grandmother became the guardian of her fortune. Her grandmother is very homophobic. She has continually tried to pressure Kit into being with a man. She has set her up on dates. She withholds her trust fund from her unless she goes on these dates with men. But she's only ever wanted women, and she loves Becca. And Becca is a manipulative cunt. There is no other word to use for her. I don't do that word lightly, but that is how she's described in this book by everyone, and it fits. She wants literally the best of both worlds, and she gets off on manipulating people. So the prequel of this book, really, which it ends up being like, it's a trilogy, but Fold was like supposed to be a prequel, and it's almost a full book size, whatever. I guess these were like repackaged to look the way they look now. But Fold is basically like the before timeline about like how these two found out about each other. They actually have a connection because they meet at this bridge where one of them is maybe contemplating suicide, and they kind of like walk each other back, and their interest in each other kind of starts in this weird way. Preston, he's definitely attracted to her. He knows she's a lesbian. He doesn't expect anything out of it, but he has this odd attraction and kind of affection for her. And so in Fold, he does what he can to make sure that Becca will never get her claws into Kit again. And the way that he does this severs his any possible relationship or friendship, mostly that he could have had with Kit. Because they connect that night on the bridge. So for him, there's attraction. For her, it's this attraction of like a friend. Like, she's not thinking of him in sexual terms at all at this point. But anyway, you can tell the premise that interested me is the fact that it's a lesbian and a straight man, and this is their romance. Because that's the prequel about how they meet, but it's also book 1 in this trilogy, okay? And I gave it 3 stars. It was way too long. There was no steam at all in this, really. I mean, I gave it 2 stars because there's spice between these characters and the cheating cunt that I've spoken about. So yeah, there was spice in it, but you don't enjoy any of it because it's this horrible person that they are doing it with. So then there's the next book, which is a Bluff, and this is the current timeline. So it's 3 years later, and Kit has a business and things are going great, but her grandmother is dying. And her grandmother has threatened to give her fortune to her uncle, which it's a shitty thing that her grandmother is able to be in full control of her fortune, even though her parents were leaving it to her, and her parents were not homophobic and wouldn't have had any problem. Anyway, it's a whole thing. So her grandmother is going to give all of her money to her uncle if she doesn't marry a man and start trying for children. So, through some, kismet situations, she runs into Preston again, and she decides who better to be my fake husband than someone that I hate, and also he has a gambling addiction, so I could pay him off. So I could have him be my husband and dangle this money over his head, and we'll make it work. Preston has never stopped thinking about her as friends and as more. And so for both Bluff and All In, we watched this fake marriage, this marriage of convenience, evolve into something more. Okay. So I gave Bluff 3.5 stars. And again, there was not really much between the two of them. And the thing is like, I'm okay with that. But it was starting to be a lot because I was like, I wanted their relationship to have time to grow, because what I find interesting about books where someone has like a change in their sexuality or like it evolves, whether that is like a gay for you gay romance, or in this case, it's a like, I'm straight for you, or I'm whatever. Like, this woman has literally never seen a dick before. She is not interested in dick at all. And what I love in a book that has this kind of like questioning your sexuality is when it isn't about the sexuality at all. When it's, I've fallen in love with you no matter what your body parts are. We'll make our body parts work however they need to work. And so what I was in for with this series, and what I wanted so badly, and why I read 600 pages total before I got some P&V action going on, was I wanted to see that emotional change that leads to a sexual change. Because to me, that is believable. And it's the same way that I believe a very well done, like, gay for you book, even though I know for some people those can be very offensive books, and I agree. But for me, they work when it's like, I've fallen for you, and I don't care whether you have a dick or not. Like, I love that stuff. Because to me, if I were to ever have a change in my own sexuality, it would be because I've fallen so deeply in love with a person, with their heart, with their soul. And then, okay, I guess they have a vagina too. Cool, but I'm in love with this person. Like, if I were to ever have shifting sexuality, it would be because I loved the person so much, So anyway, point being, that's what I wanted. And in book 3, All In, I really did start to feel that. And the issue I have with the series is what I said, like, the drama levels are so high. Like, these are supposed to be 25, 26-year-old people. And I know that that's not fully adult. Okay, I know it's not. But Ashley Jade, in the books I've read, and I've read quite a few, she writes her characters so young. They're so over dramatic. They blow everything out of proportion. There are miscommunication after miscommunication. And so this book had that beauty I was looking for with watching their sexuality like evolve together. And there's a beautiful metaphor that Kit uses where she's always has been a mermaid and her grandmother's been trying to make her walk on land. And she's not meant to walk on land, so it's awkward and it's painful and she's drying out. And she explains that to Preston at one point, and he's like, I remember you saying that you weren't meant to walk on land, but like, you never asked if I was willing to swim in the sea with you. And I'm absolutely willing to swim in the sea with you. And I just love that part of it. But it's drowned under some of the most dramatic, petty bullshit ever. as well as some very high trigger warnings. Like there is a risky pregnancy in here. Obviously there is a surprise baby. As I said, there is talk of child rape and assault. There is abusive parent. Like there is a lot of trigger warnings in this, as well as just the high level of drama, and the homophobia of the grandmother is very like triggering. I'm not even gay, and I was very triggered by this grandmother. So it was just a lot. So the third one I did give 4 stars to, because damn it, I made it through all 3 of those books, and I did love those 2 characters together by the end. So I did give it 4 stars by the end. An average of 3.5 stars for the series as a whole. And the last book did have 3 stars. So, last book I want to talk about, which I won't have too much to say because it's our book club book. So, the Romance Takeover readathon is going on right now. I will be going back to it after I get my videos updated and everything. And one of my books for it was Ravishing the Heiress. This is also the Rake Appreciation Society pick for January. So, Crystal and I will be talking about this on her channel at 7 p.m. Central on the 21st or the 20th. I don't know, but it's Thursday this week, whenever that is. And I had been very intrigued to read this book since I listened to the Fated Mates episode about this book, and Crystal really wanted us to do a Sherry Thomas, and so we settled on this one. I was very nervous to read it because, again, I listened to the podcast about it, so I didn't know what this book was about, but I really did like it. Again, I don't want to go into full details of why, but the setup of this story is that Millicent is in an arranged marriage, and she's been with the Earl of Fitzhugh since she was 16 years old. Okay, it was an arranged marriage. He was 19, she was 16, so they were both children. He was in love with someone else. She fell in love with him at first sight. And she's just devastated because she's being forced into this marriage with him when he's in love with someone else. She knows that she has no hope, because she's always going to be the woman that took him away from the love of his life. But what's even more heart-wrenching is they've been together for 8 years. And the woman that he loved, Isabella, her husband has just died. And she's been in mourning for a year. She's out of mourning. She's had children with this man. And she's available now to be Fitz's mistress. And Fitz is overjoyed about this. And Millie, who is deeply in love with her husband, who is also her best friend, and she is willing to give him his happily ever after, where he gets to live with the love of his life, and she will be his estranged wife, who just continues on and really just kind of fades into the background. But before this happens, Fitz wants to honor their bargain that they have an heir, because her family needs an heir just as much as his does. So he comes to her with, let us take 6 months before I go to live with Isabella to see if we can have a baby. We'll be together for 6 months. They've never consummated their marriage ever. They've lived as brother and sister, as best friends for all this time. And Millie is terrified because she knows that when she is naked and open before him, that she will not be able to hide her feelings. And it's one thing if she's never tasted him, if she's never had that touch with him. It's one thing to let him go if that's never happened. But if she has to literally cut herself open and expose herself for those 6 months and then have him leave her for another woman, she won't survive it. So we're in this very interesting situation, and I'll leave it at that with the setup. This book involves their present timeline as well as when they first got married and how they became friends and what's happened in their lives. And it was really beautiful. So I gave this book 4 stars. And again, I'll talk about why after what I just said. It wasn't 5 stars, but I gave this 4 stars, and it had barely 2 stars on the spice. So not a lot of spice in this, but if you're someone who likes very thought-provoking historicals and you're willing to kind of go through a lot of pain with your characters, I think you could really enjoy this book. So there we go. That is week 2 of 2022. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my new channel member for joining. If you would like to be a channel member, you can check that out down below. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. I put up 3 to 4 videos a week, so make sure you are clicking that bell so you get notified when I upload. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.